Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Now NHL, local experts with the biggest stories on the ice. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. Our Locked On NHL hosts are here. They're going to recap everything from a Monday night in hockey and West Coast beats East Coast in overtime in Boston in our biggest game.
The biggest game.
The Boston Bruins were leading with a minute to go, but they couldn't quite finish it out. LA pulled out a victory right out from under Boston's nose. Our Locked On Bruins host recaps how Boston let this one slip away.
For the third time in their past 4 games, the Boston Bruins allowed a game-tying goal in the final minute of regulation. However, unlike recent games, they were not able to get the extra point in extra time, as the Los Angeles Kings scored in overtime to beat the Bruins in their first game back after a lengthy road trip. This is Ian McLaren, host of Locked On Boston Bruins, and with the extra skater pulled, the Kings did indeed tie it. Late in the third period, the Bruins had previously allowed the Anaheim Ducks to tie things up, as well as the Columbus Blue Jackets in 3 of their past 4 games. So it's a bit of a troubling trend for the Boston Bruins. They were not able to get the goal with the empty net on the other side of the ice, and they allowed Los Angeles to tie it. Andreas Athanasiou buries it in overtime to erase what had been a pretty strong game for Linus Ullmark and a bit of a bounce-back performance with Jeremy Swayman taking over the net in Boston. Catch all the latest on the Boston Bruins on Locked On Boston Bruins, your favorite team, every single day on the Locked On Podcast Network.
Let's go around the league.
The Florida Panthers are on a winning streak right now, thanks in large part to their play on special teams. As Florida tallied 2 more goals on the power play and another win, Locked On Panthers tells us how this stretch has set a new franchise record in Florida.
It's now 1, 2, 3, 4 games now that the Florida Panthers get 2 power play goals, a franchise record. What is up, guys? It's Armando Velez from the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, and the Florida Panthers winning streak continues at 3 as the Florida Panthers take down the Buffalo Sabres by a final score of 6-1 on the road in Western New York. And the Florida Panthers just continue this amazing run after going on a recent losing streak. They come back with three straight to win it, outscoring their opposition 15-3. And the last 87 minutes and 28 seconds against the Buffalo Sabres, going back to the last game, the Florida Panthers have outscored the Buffalo Sabres 12-1. So just the Panthers are continuing to build off of what last season has been and continue to just defeat the teams that they are better on paper. So there's no letdowns when it comes to this Florida Panthers team. Spencer Knight makes his first NHL start since February 1st, right before the All-Star break. Spent some time in the AHL, and now he comes back with getting 28 of 29 tonight against the Buffalo Sabres. So great news for Spencer Knight as he continues his development and continues to be a reliable backup, hopefully, for Sergei Bobrovsky. So to listen to my recap of this 6-1 win over the Buffalo Sabres, make sure to listen to my recap on the latest episode of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, your first listen of the day.
The Toronto Maple Leafs blew a huge lead on the road last night, but were able to pick themselves up late and still get a win. Our Locked On Leafs host goes over an up and down night for Toronto.
The Maple Leafs survive a scare in Columbus. Hi, I'm Mike DiStefano from Locked On Leafs. Toronto had a dominant first period in which they were up 3-0 after 1. It looked like they were going to stomp all over Columbus. And then the collapse started. It was 3-1, then 3-2, and then 3-3. Eventually, the Columbus Blue Jackets came all the way back to tie it. It's true what they say, the 3-0 lead is the worst lead in hockey, but then the Maple Leafs buckled down and got the lead back, made it 4-3 before finally getting another insurance marker. 5-3 was the final. Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, Michael Bunting, all with a goal in this game. Matthews is 40th of the season. He becomes the first player in the NHL to hit the 40-goal mark. Peter Mrazek gets the victory with a 31-save performance. And Toronto dusts off the Columbus Blue Jackets, ending their 2-game skid. They win the game 5-4 in regulation. For a full breakdown analysis of tonight's game, go check out the Locked On Leafs podcast.
The Avs and Islanders weren't giving their fans much to cheer about in terms of offense in the early part of their game last night, but they did end up exploding for a combined 7 goals in the third period. Our Locked On Avalanche and Islanders hosts report from the late high-scoring affair.
The Colorado Avalanche escaped New York with a 5-4 win over the New York Islanders. After a 1-1 gridlock at 1, the second period proved uneventful after no one scored in the second. But then both teams woke up and scored a combined 7 goals in the third period, and the Avalanche walk away with a 3-point night out of Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar and a 5-4 win over former goalie for the Avalanche, Semyon Varlamov. But that's not the end of the familiar faces for the Avalanche, because this is night 1 of 2 of an East Coast swing back-to-back series. The Avalanche are traveling to the Prudential Center in New Jersey to face off against former Colorado Avalanche defenseman Ryan Graves and the New Jersey Devils. Chris Maselli, the other half of the Locked On Avalanche podcast, was in attendance at the UBS Arena to watch this win tonight. We will both be at the Prudential Center tomorrow for the New Jersey Devils game. So make sure you are following us on all the socials, anywhere you can find Locked On Avalanche, for your up-to-date news and information straight from the arena.
Gil Martin of Locked On Islanders here. Islanders fall to the Colorado Avalanche 5-4. You got to feel for Semyon Varlamov. He faced 49 shots in this game, kept the Islanders in a game that they were being thoroughly outplayed in, and yet he was trailing 5-1 after a 4-goal outburst in the early part of the third period. To their credit, the Islanders did not quit. They scored 3 goals to make it a 1-goal game in the final minute, but it wasn't enough. Look, the Avalanche were faster, more skilled, smarter with the puck. The Islanders' defense was a step behind all game, and if it wasn't for Semyon Varlamov, this game could have easily been 8-1 before the Islanders started their comeback, rather than 5-1. For more, listen to the Locked On Islanders podcast with me, Gil Martin, wherever you get podcasts.
That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Now NHL. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. Make sure you check out Locked On NHL and your team's Locked On podcast. I'm Kainani Stevens, and this has been Locked On Now.